So now I'm just going to put empty brackets here because right now our array of questions are going to be empty. Inside of here, we don't want to just put all of our questions. We don't want to do that. We want to put our questions in a different location, just like we agreed upon in our small sketch when we came up with everything. So what we can do is open up the hierarchy, command 1, and go to question. And so let's look at this. What we want is a new file. We're going to make a new file for now. And our new file is going to be question data. Okay. Let's start making our questions. Say, let question 1 equal question. Let's say, is iPhone the best? I promise I'm not biased. I promise. Question 2 will be only iPad Pro can use Apple Pencil. Let's be true. Let question 3 question. All right, so we currently have 5 questions. So what we can do is go back to the quiz view controller. By the way, I'm going to do command 0 to close out my hierarchy. A fast way to travel between your different files is command shift O as an octopus. And then you can type in the name of the file you want to go to. I want to go to quiz view controller. So I start typing in quiz, and there it is. Hit return, boom, brings me there. So first thing I want to do is actually set up my array of questions. Now, I could just go through here and type them in, but I want to get the gears turning on how you use methods to do things for you. You don't want to be manually typing everything out. You don't want to be manually doing everything. So let's say you have your data there and you want your you want to make a method that's going to retrieve that data and put it into questions. So we would do that by making a new method called get questions. And we're using camel casing for how we format for our naming convention. So get get questions. Yeah, get questions is fine. And so what we will do is let questions equal question 1, question 2. And we're basically just kind of pretending that these questions are on some server somewhere, and you're using a method to populate our array up at the top. There's probably a much better example I could have provided for you, but we will roll with this for now. I'll probably have some much better examples for you in the future. I did not. I'm going to copy and paste this and say and you can do a 2-finger. Oh, let's rename this. You can also do a 2-finger swipe to the right and left to go back and forth between your pages. Question 5. Okay. So I taught you how to do a for loop in our loops video. So let's use that. We can do for question in questions. We can say, does anyone remember how you actually append a element to an array? How you add an element to an array? I just gave it away. You append it. So you would go self.questions. And when we do self.questions, where self is referring to QuizViewController. Okay. Self.questions dot append question, and we would do questions or question. That means that basically it's going to loop through for every question inside of, and this could be named anything. This could just be called Q if we wanted to. It doesn't matter. This represents one element inside of our array here called questions that we had just created. And it's cycling through there and appending each one of them to it. Sometimes if your code is acting up, you can do Command B and build your project. But that's building it without running the whole project. Next, we want to make sure that when the view loads, we are actually making sure that the questions array up at the top, our property, is all populated. It has all the questions in it. So what do we need to do in order to do that? We go to the viewDidLoad method, and we actually call our method that we made, get questions, right in there. That means once the view loads, it goes ahead, it looks for all the questions, and it starts populating them into the questions array at the top. now we need a way of deciding what question comes first and how it's cycling through all these questions. So in order to keep track of all this, we do need to create some kind of counter. So we'll make a counter property. So we'll go var counter, which is going to be of type int. And by default, it will be 5. Okay. We want to make a new method in here. Let's first go ahead and put our method below the buttons. We want to have the buttons a little bit closer to the top. That way we can always easily get to them. We don't want them to be buried underneath everything. So I'm going to highlight all of these guys, and I can do Command Option and use the square brackets like in a previous video I shared with you to move this down. There we go. And let's only keep about 2 spaces between, just for formatting. So it looks nice and neat. Now underneath question, get question, which I should probably change this to get questions. If you want to rename a method or anything that you've created, you can hold the command, go to rename, and you can change it, hit return. There we go. Changes it everywhere. Okay. And so now I can do a new method called set question. Set question. Okay. Now, what set question is going to do, it's going to set up the question based on the current, it's going to set up the view based on the current question. Now we have a property up top called current question, and it is a variable, so it's meant to change from time to time. We may go from one question to another, and whatever question we have selected at the time, we want to display the proper question, and the button needs to do whatever it needs to do for that. So let's do that. So we'll change this to set up question. So question label, question label. Now we could do self.question label. We don't need to because we're not inside of too many brackets. Once you're inside of too many brackets, like right here, we have our get questions. This bracket, we're inside of this bracket, and then we're inside of this bracket and this bracket. Yeah, we probably want to use self to be very clear about which questions we mean. Also, I did a very bad practice here where I named questions this local property. I call it a local property because we're only using it in here. I named it the same as our global property inside of, this still isn't quite global, but global in the sense of this class. So I named these two the same. You don't casually want to do that. You want to find some clever way of doing that. Plus, we probably wouldn't do things this way anyway, necessarily. We would be getting data from a server, which baby steps. We've got to start with this first. So we have our question label at the top. It is of type UI label. I may have shown you this in the last video. If you command click and jump to definition, you have text, font. There's so many. UI label is a class that has so many different properties that you can affect. UI label itself is not the text, so you don't go UI label and then just say equals, some string or whatever to change the text on that label. You have to do UI label dot text equals. We want this to be current questions question. Capiche? And so let's go ahead and set current question. Set up current question at the beginning when view did load, so we can make sure that this is working properly. That means that current question would be, are you ready to start? And the proper answer for it would be true, but our label should say, are you ready to start? So if I hit play, the simulator opens up. All right, and it says, are you ready to start? Which is great. Perfect. Now we can go back over here and stop it. Now, I hit play earlier, but you can always do Command R, as in Richard. And that would actually run the project and start the simulator and everything.